Building bridges is ideal for creating lifelong social relationships with others, but not always when dealing with the undead. We're talking about Bridge Constructor: The Walking Dead.
Fresh out the oven.
It's stupid how big of a franchise The Walking Dead has turned out to be. What started as a simple zombie survival comic book series has turned into 3 separate TV shows, 1 talk show about said TV series, multiple seasons of an award-winning adventure game by Telltale, 2 first-person shooters of varying quality, 3 mobile games based off of different TV series, non-comic book novels by various authors, and even a tabletop RPG as well as a card game. Then there's all the merchandise, cameos, references, or spin-offs into other existing media, and it's needless to say, The Walking Dead can be found just about anywhere if you look hard enough. One place I never expected to see it, however, was being part of a physics simulation puzzle game by a little indie dev studio called Clockstone. While Clockstone has been around since 2007, they didn't really find their footing until 2011 with the release of the original Bridge Constructor, a simple game about building complex and structurally sound bridges, which, while not being a genre in of itself, is a concept used by a surprising amount of games. Regardless of the competition, Bridge Constructor did so well that it was ported all over the dang place, and would be pretty much the only thing Clockstone focused on from then on. Now, the series isn't completely new to the idea of mixing itself with other franchises, as with the release of Bridge Constructor Portal in 2017. Then, the devs adapted ideas from Valve Software's first-person puzzler into their own structural mechanics, making a game that took some real out-of-the-box thinking to play. The series has always had an openness to its level design, meaning that as long as players completed the overall objective of getting something from point A to point B, they can move on from one level to another, regardless of how they managed to do it. This paired well with portals, and other such mechanics, but what all could they really do with zombies? Surprisingly, more than you think. For one thing, this time around, the devs took the time to actually add some narrative to their game. While The Walking Dead has almost always been about interpersonal character relationships and drama, opposed to mindless zombie killing, Bridge Constructor never really had any kind of story aspect before. The previous game, based on Portal, had some bits of dialogue here and there by Portal's main antagonist GLaDOS, but that was a bit different. GLaDOS was part of what makes Portal, and works mainly as a managerial antagonist, and people would expect anything set in that universe to include her. The Walking Dead, on the other hand, doesn't really have anything like that. That being said, familiar names do crop up. Clockstone went for an original story instead of a straight adaptation in order to make something that would sensibly fit into the game's mechanics. Miles and Kira are 2 strangers connected only by circumstance and find themselves trapped within a world of the living dead. After coming across Eugene and realizing that they don't have access to basic weapons to take on the undead horde in a one-on-one fight, they decide to put their brains to the test and build their way through any situation. Exactly where they get construction supplies or how they're able to build anything without disturbing the surrounding zombies is a mystery, but it's all part of the magic of video games. As time goes on, more characters will join the party, but threats never seem to fully deviate. It's not long before the group comes across a cult of survivors who've decided to rebuild the world in their image and kill anyone who disagrees. They find the group's building talents fascinating, and with that, set off to hunt them down at any cost. It's a rather basic setup that does a decent job of giving context for what players are doing from level to level, but problematic. The main issue is just how the game is written. Characters are generally uninteresting and don't do much to stand out from each other, outside of Eugene being the smart one, which is shown off by the ridiculous way he talks. Everyone has pretty much the same voice to their writing, and the narration relies on people recognizing names from the Walking Dead franchise to really draw in any interest. For most franchises, this would be fine, but it gets tricky when it comes to The Walking Dead. Telltale's adventure game series is really the only game with the license that's been able to capture the character-to-character dynamics, similar to the original source material due to it being an adventure game and that genre focusing more on story and narrative than anything else. Other genres, like first-person shooters, have had a difficult time trying to get that across, and there's the same problem here. You can't have too much discussion and too much character interaction in a series like Bridge Constructor, as players will want to spend most of their time building bridges opposed to reading text. And there's not a whole lot that can be done with bridge building mechanics to incorporate character relationships. That being said, for what it is, it's fine, as long as you don't try to look too much into things. Mechanically, on the other hand, Clockstone made some rather interesting decisions this time around. Obviously, being a game about building bridges means players will be spending most of their time building bridges. But bridges aren't the only thing that can be built. The traditional setup for the series is a vehicle, a gap, and a finish line, with the goal being simply to get the vehicle across the gap in any way possible. Sure, you can build a bridge in most situations to complete the objective, but where's the fun in limiting things to that? Why not build a ramp for some nice airtime, or set a trap to take down as many zombies as possible on your way across? There are only specific areas in each level that can be built in, and a few solid yellow points here and there to anchor your construction, which forces players to get a bit creative. Everything else comes down to how well you can wrap your mind around the game's physics system and stop things from just collapsing in on themselves. Even though the characters from the game's story are supposed to be driving the main vehicles that show up, they will just drive straight constantly whenever you test a level, regardless if there's anything in front of them to drive on or not. This doesn't look too weird for vehicles just driving straight off a cliff to their doom, as a station wagon or RV don't exactly stop on a dime, but it does look a bit off when a person does it. New to this game are levels where you not only have vehicles to worry about getting to their destination, but also people. And people are stupid. They act more like lemmings from that old series of games, as they can do only one thing at a time, and will really only do what they are told. Levels with them not only have the usual build mode for constructing contraptions, but also a mode for telling characters what to do at different waypoints in a level. Your basic character can only walk forward, climb a ladder, or interact with a button, and that's about it. Supposedly, they're able to climb short ledges or jump small gaps automatically, but in my experience, they don't really do that. What's considered jumping is really just the space between one platform and another that someone can cover in the air as they walk off of a ledge, the same as a vehicle. There's no jump animation or anything to really make it look or feel like a jump at all. It really reminds me of the old Super Mario Bros. Idea of just running so fast you don't have time to fall between the blocks. Climbing, on the other hand, fails to really do much 9 times out of 10. Just like jumping, it comes down to utilizing a character's momentum to push them up and over something instead of them reaching and pulling themselves up. Sometimes they will actually do that and it's shown off with an animation, but mostly it's hit or miss. Since you can only tell characters what to do at specific waypoints and there's a limited amount of commands you can give them in general, you can't actively tell them when to jump or climb something, instead figuring things out via trial and error. The most that can be set at a waypoint is really just which direction a character should move in when they run into it. Some characters will have special abilities they can make use of at a waypoint, such as shooting a gun, throwing a grenade, or throwing a talking doll to cause a distraction. But there's a limited number of these you can use per level, and not everyone has one. Just like with vehicles, getting someone from their starting position to a goal is a normal objective you'll come across. But people can't take as much of a beating as vehicles, and it doesn't count if they get to their destination while being dead. Long falls or too much fighting with zombies is a quick way to get somebody killed. Characters will automatically defend themselves a bit as long as the threat is directly in front of them. But Daryl and Michonne are really the only ones who could put up much of a fight. Instead of just going from A to B, many levels are designed around you building some kind of Rube Goldberg machine death trap to kill a specific number of enemies, or get a specific something like some barrels from one place to another. You do have to be careful though, as these death traps and moving objects will not only kill enemies, but also your people if they happen to be in the way. On top of that, the brain-dead characters you control don't take each other into account when told to do something at a waypoint, and will happily shoot and kill each other if someone happens to be in the way when they're told to fire. While thinking outside of the box to build these death traps is honestly a neat idea and a good way to reuse the bridge constructor physics and construction mechanics in a new way, controlling individual characters kinda comes off as half-baked. Starting a level with a ton of waypoints can be intimidating at first, but most of the time it just comes down to using them to make people change direction more than anything else. Commands are done sequentially as well, so if someone hits the same waypoint twice, they'll get the next command in the list instead of repeating things from the top. Many times I had to use this just to keep people moving back and forth, wasting time till an area was ready for them to cross. And you have to wait for everyone to finish moving before being told if you managed to complete all of the objectives in a level or not. While you can swap between build mode, waypoint manage mode, and play mode at any time, play mode doesn't have any fast forward nor rewind options. The only thing you can do is pause or restart, which means every time you change something, you're going to have to wait till your people get to whatever changed to see if that will actually work. Play mode is also where you'll see how your construction is working, if parts of it will just break automatically, and which parts are dealing with the most stress. The more stress something has, the redder it'll turn until it flat out breaks, and that's not always an ideal result. There are a few different materials to build things with, each with their own specifications, and more importantly, price. Wood is the cheapest but also the weakest and lightest, while steel is the strongest but heavier and more expensive. Both have limits to how long of a section they can make, while rope, on the other hand, doesn't. Although rope can't support structures from underneath, only hanging them from above. Every level has a specific resource budget to work within, but there isn't really a penalty for going overboard. If you manage to be under budget, then you'll get a nice badge for that level, which only seems to go toward achievements. If you don't care about that stuff, then there's nothing to worry about, and you can build the most elaborate monstrosity your heart desires. It's not about how you complete the level, just that you complete the level. Overall, Bridge Constructor The Walking Dead brings some interesting ideas to the series, but I'm not sure if it manages to really capitalize on them. Building maddening death machines opposed to only transportation structures is a nice change of pace, but having to deal with keeping a brain-dead group of survivors alive at the same time can be rather frustrating. They tend to do the opposite of what I want them to more than not, and it almost feels like glitching the game at times to get them to work properly. Coming to grips with the game's physics and momentum simulation is only half the battle here, as you also have to overcome general stupidity, which feels out of place for this kind of game. While I appreciate what Clockstone was trying to do, I think they would have done better sticking to the Rube Goldberg machines rather than lemmings. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game in this video or the comment section. I'm Megapieman, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more of my stuff? Click on the video on the left to check out an extremely impressive Doom 2 mod that's supposedly the scariest Doom 2 mod in existence. Or click on the video on the right for Creaks, a puzzle platformer where furniture is trying to eat you.